No, I was thinking the other day, how many grots does it take to screw in a light bulb? How you doing, guys? Big Mate Danscore here again today, back once again with another episode of Warhammer Thoughty K. And this week's episode is entitled, how many grots does it take to screw in a light bulb? Well, that's what the episode's called, but that's not quite what we're going to be discussing here. What we're going to be discussing is vehicles in 8th edition and some of the changes to them. Commissar Gamza put out a video this week about how he thought vehicles were going to be terrible in 8th edition. He doesn't like the fact that they're going to get close combat attacks and they've got a weapon skill. And he doesn't like the fact that small arms fire is basically going to be able to take them out. Now, like everything Commissar Gamza does, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and he puts on an extreme opinion. I think he does that in part to gain more views, which is absolutely, it's a proven tactic to work, being controversial in your videos, stuff like that. So anyway, so I was thinking after watching that video, I was thinking, I totally disagree with that. So here's my point of view. My point of view is, let's talk firstly about how many grots it takes to take down an Imperial Knight, let's say. Now, for me, the idea of a small arms fire, or someone with an axe or a sword or something being able to take out a tank or an Imperial Knight, it's very, it's cinematic, but it also puts the idea in my head of like a stonemason. A stonemason chips away at this rock, and he chips away at it bit by bit, and he makes it into whatever shape he wants. Now, it takes ages, it's a very long process, but eventually he gets it into the shape that he wants. Now, the way I'm translating that into talking about vehicles and swords and axes and stuff is, if you work away at one area of a vehicle, a tank or a truck or whatever, you will eventually be able to weaken part of it enough that you can do some damage to it. Is it truly the case where a guy with a knife will be able to take out a Land Raider? Potentially, is what I'm going to say. Now, speaking from some sort of second-hand experience here, a friend of mine, or someone I used to know, his dad used to own an armoured personnel carrier. And if you've ever been to Warhammer World, it's very similar looking to the Rhino that's outside Warhammer World. So from this point forward, we'll call it a Rhino. So, his dad used to own a Rhino, and he'd take it to shows and stuff, and he'd drive it round these show grounds and stuff, and then he'd drive it into, he takes it to this place called Congleton in Cheshire, where they'd have like a charity show on every year, where there's all vintage vehicles and also military vehicles on display for people to look at, people to get inside, and he used to do car crushing and stuff like that in this Rhino. So one day he was out, and this has happened a couple of times as well. He was out, he took it through Congleton, and he was turning, and one of the tracks slipped off. Now, the tracks are a weak point in the design of a tank. They make it able to go over more terrain. They make it able to turn on its center spot, basically. So tracks they're a very a good way of making something able to go across loads of terrain, like I said. But they are a weak point because they can move. They can slide off the, I don't know what all the different parts of a tank are called, but they can slide off the cogs and stuff that they go around that moves them round. And then that immobilises the vehicle, basically, or semi-immobilises it. If you've got two tracks, one track's sheared off off its bearings, let's say, then you've got one track, and then your vehicle's just going to spin round like that, sort of on this axis, and it's just going to go round in a circle like that, not going to be able to do anything. So the idea for me is that someone with an axe or with a sword would be able to jam it into the weak spots of the vehicle, like the tracks, and then potentially take off the tracks. And then if you get the other track as well, then you can do some damage there. You've also got guns. You can find like the eye slits on rhinos and stuff like that, where the driver looks through. On my friend's vehicle, you'd pop your head out of the tank and drive it like that. And the isolet on a Rhino is basically going to be the same sort of thing. And also in the far future, in the Warhammer Thoughty K universe, a lot of technology has been lost and forgotten. So even the Imperial technology, it's going to be, you know, the best of Imperial technology isn't always going to be that good, that reliable. So there will be weak spots like the isolates. There might not be any armoured glass in there. I've never seen any armoured glass on an Imperial vehicle. Well, actually no, I guess the Storm Raven could potentially have armoured glass, and the Flyers, stuff like that. But yeah, the isolate could be a weak point. That's basically the point I'm trying to make. Any open hatch, open door, any ventilation system, the engines are on the outside, or, you know, on some of them, like on the Land Raider, the engine can be on the top, I think, with a hatch off. So who's to say what damage could be done to that part of the vehicle? And yes, it could be difficult for someone to clamber up a Land Raider and then attack the engine directly, but once you get up there, you can do some damage. So for me, the idea that infantry can take out a tank in close combat or with small arms fire, it's very cinematic. It creates this narrative in my head, which I really like personally. Obviously, if you don't like it, if you think like Gamza does, it's stupid, then that's fair enough. That's your opinion, and you know, this is my opinion. My opinion is right, though. Only joking. So yeah, that's one thing. But the idea of a vehicle attacking in close combat. Now, Gamza didn't like that because I think for some reason he's thinking like it doesn't make sense. But to me, it does make sense. A tank, like I said, it's on tracks, drives up like that, it turns like that, it turns on its centre axis. It can spin round like that in a tighter circle than any car could. So if I'm driving a tank and someone's attacking me, I'm gonna. A lot of tanks are driven with 2 levers. I don't know if all tanks are, but this armoured personnel carrier my mate's dad had was driven with 2 levers. I think it was 2, it might have been more than 2. But basically, one operates the left track, one operates the right track. So if I push one forward and pull one back, the tracks are going opposite direction. They can spin round and they can crush anyone. They can move quick enough to crush anyone that's too close to it. So these guys that are trying to get in there and damage this vital equipment on the outside of the tank, they're going to take hits now and again. And that's like a tank squashing you. It might knock you over and then just slide over you. And then you're splat on the pavement. There we go. So for me, and some of the profiles we've seen as well suggest that tanks aren't going to have a high weapon skill. They're not going to be very good in close combat, but they're going to be able to do damage, and high strength damage at that. Because it's you know, a 5, 6, 7 ton vehicle going over you, basically. So if you don't get out of the way quick enough, you're going to get hit. And yeah, they might not make that many hits in close combat, but they're going to hit things. Now, to end this week's episode, I'm going to discuss some dice rolling that I've done. I did it yesterday. I started it the day before, actually, which sort of gives you an idea of how long it took me. So I started it the day before, then I went away and I came back to it. This dice rolling is how many grots it takes to take down an Imperial Knight. Now, we've seen the stat line for an Imperial Knight. We've seen that it's got 24 wounds, and it's toughness 8, I think. But that's irrelevant. The question is, how many grots does it take down? Does it take to take down an Imperial Knight? Now, what I've done is grots shooting against the Knight. And you may be thinking, but we've not seen a Grot Blaster's profile. We've not seen a Grot Blaster's profile, no. But I think it's safe to assume that a Grot is going to hit on a 4. A Grot in the current edition hits on a 4. And the vast majority of profiles we've seen so far hit on the same roll as they would have hit on in the previous edition. So it's safe to assume that a Grot's going to hit on a 4. And a Grot Blaster, I think, in the current edition is strength 3. Now, a toughness 8 Knight, it's not gonna wound it. Let's assume, basically what I'm trying to say is, let's assume the Grot Blaster is still strength 3. So the only roll it's going to wound the Imperial Knight on is going to be a 6. Okay, so here's what I did. I rolled 30 dice at a time, so 30 grots shooting at one Imperial Knight. I didn't record the first well, I didn't record the first 6 lots of rolls, but basically I was chipping off 1, 2, or no wounds for each round of shooting that I did. After 6 rounds of shooting, I had the knight down to 19 wounds. 7 rounds of shooting, I didn't get any more wounds. 8 rounds of shooting, I had it down to 18 wounds. 9 rounds of shooting, 16, I got 2 off there, very good. And anyway, going along, I'm going to give you 3 seconds now to tell me how many rounds of shooting or how many shots it took for me to take out this Imperial Knight. So 3, 2, 1, go. Right, so anyway, yeah, altogether it took me 930 shots to take out an Imperial Knight. The Imperial Knight has a 3-up armor save, so you're going to really struggle to get through that. And it has a 5-up invuln as well, but the 5-up invuln doesn't even come into play. The 3-up armor save really made it difficult for me to do a lot of damage. What I found, I think you could do it in fewer shots. I think that, you know, there could be a game where 500 shots could take out an Imperial Knight, 500 shots from Grots, just from lucky dice rolling. I found that a lot of my 6s were coming in the rolls to hit rather than the rolls to wound. I think the most 6s I got in a round of rolls to wound was 4. So there we go, yeah, so it took me 930 shots to take out an Imperial Knight. I actually got it down to -2 wounds. So there we go. So vehicles in 8th edition, they're going to get an armor save, they're going to get toughness, and they're going to get a high amount of wounds. So it's not like they're going to be taken out really quickly. They're going to last, believe me. I say believe me, you know, I could be completely wrong about the Grot Blaster, but, you know, that's what I thought, you know, I'd have a little bit of fun. Which I think is exactly what Commissar Gamza is trying to do. He's got strong opinions and he likes to voice them in a way that he knows what he's talking about, and that's absolutely fine. He's a very successful YouTuber. So we'll leave it there, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you on the battlefield.